Welcome back to Pictish Shorts. We've been away a little while. The Pictish Shorts is the PAS, the Pictish Art Society's podcast with very simple questions and often very complicated answers. Now, most of our guests so far have been from the academic world. So we've had some art historians and archaeologists and historians. Today, we're going to take a wee bit of a detour out into the media world because our guest today has a very well-kent face. It's Alistair Heather. Alistair is a journalist, a TV presenter, a travel guide and an author, and he grew up in the village just down the road from me. If you ask me, his greatest personality trait is his support of Dundee United Football Club, making him a very civilised fellow in my book. But without further ado, let's say hello to Ali. Ali, how are you doing?
Hello. Great, and thanks very much for having me on.
Ali, what are you up to at the moment? Because we see you all the time. I see you about every 10 minutes on social media of some kind or another. So what are you up to?
So the big things just now is I've just put my first book text in for publication. That'll be out spring 2027. That is a journey through Scotland through really interesting little vignettes, little 500, 600 word historical stories that give you, hopefully, as you travel, different layers to the landscape you're going through, as well as just like the kind of the tourist or the Wikipedia page for a place. There'll be 3 or 4 really humanizing stories that give you a sense of the lives that have been lived in the place you are as you're going through it. So that's just been put in. Writing for the Scots magazine every month about different historical travels. And just get ready to gear up for all the tours I'll be leading this summer.
That sounds fantastic. I like your social media stuff. I love that just dropping a place and a wee story that you haven't heard of. It's like, the guy Ali who does the Jacobite footsteps things, making things very, very human, Sometimes we talk too much about battles and know enough about the people that were in them.
That's honestly, and social media is good for it's terrible for some things, but it's really good for little snippets that just add a bit more texture to the history you maybe already know. And I enjoy it. If I'm telling stories on the Instagram that you don't know, I'm doing my job right.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So growing up in Angus, what first interested you in the Picts, in all matters Pictish?
I do think so. We had this great teacher down at Newbiggin Primary called Mr. Henderson. He was the headmaster, and he had this great conviction of making sure we knew where we were from and made sure we valued it. Because Newbiggin, it's no on your tourist trail. It's no someplace that's got a big reputation. Like in some ways, it's like a scheme in a field. But he made sure we really felt we were fae somewhere. And one of the ways he did that was he'd get older folk fae around the village, folk that are maybe semi-retired or whatever, and they'd come in and give wee presentations or wee talks. So you had guys that were really into maps who'd bring in old maps and show us through them, or people that had done their family trees or whatever it was. And there's just one day a guy came in who's dead into the Picts. Just in the primary school classroom, there's only 30 kids in the Hill Primary. So they'd all just gather around in the one big room. And he just talked about the fact that on the laws, the hill just kind of separates Newbiggin from the civilized world. There was like loads of Pictish artifacts found. And there was evidence of like Pictish burials. And there's this whole thing that made our wee part of the world unique. This guy made it clear that Angus was a real royal artistic centre for this cool ancient people who battered the Romans. And that's the thing, like, well, if that's what this place has, then that's what I'm into. I know a lot of my pals got like Pictish tattoos. The Picts became a little bit of a totem for the local identity. So I think I was just interested at the primary school.
Yeah, the laws. I mean, I look down on the laws pretty much from my workshop, and it's a completely, I was going to say it's an underrated site. It's actually quite well known, but it's not well investigated because it was so messed up in the Victorian period, when they were raking about for treasure or something,
No, that's
quite a place.
For the very few viewers who don't know Newbiggin and the hills, it's like a long, lovely kind of low hill that gives a great view over the sort of the mouth of the Tay, but it's got the remnants of an East Coast broch, which is pretty rare. It's got Pictish stuff. It's got, I think, an Iron Age fort. I think there's been a couple of Roman finds there, and there's a sort of medieval charnel house up there as well. So it's like there's all this interesting archaeology to be found. But unfortunately, I think it's the Mackies have the farm there, and it's just very farmed.
It is very farmed. And the whole thing with the bone house, this idea of a place that you would go to see everything that had been found there laid out, very Victorian. And you could just imagine how it looked. But The plaque, of course, is the great loss from that site, and it'd be wonderful to work out one day what happened to that. Personally, I think it's probably disintegrated, but we just don't know. So, Ali, a lot's changed over the last few years, not least because people like Gordon Noble have been discovering things and writing about them. So, the next question is, what's changed about your interest in the Picts? What really interests you about them now?
Well, that's it. I think Gordon Noble, etc., and people like yourself have really helped move the Pictish discussion on Fae. When I was really young, it was all the mystery of the Picts. These noble, enigmatic people. We think they had matrilineal succession. We think that and it was like these unknowable, like I mind even the guy that worked at the Creighton Coach Inn, like our old local pub inn place.
Aye.
He was still talking about the fact that, the Picts, yeah, they're all about 4 foot tall, very dark hair, very hairy bodies. And like, what are you on about? Like, what are you on about? That's Fifers you're thinking of.
So far, you've described New Biggin as a scheme in a field, and Fifers is 4 foot tall.
Yeah, they live in sort of mud holes. So I think that the biggest change has been the fact that we now have real understanding of the Pictish civilization, the community. Like, all the little scraps of external references to them have been gathered and analysed. A lot more archaeology has been done. There's a lot more richness of what the Picts were actually about. They're not just this kind of like big Victorian question mark, like the unknowable indigenous. They are now kind of more noble, more relatable. And the big thing for me is just that Book of Kells chat, that Port Mahomet. So Port Mahomet was a centre of Pictish art and learning. And it was like a sort of colony monastery, it seems, where people would go there and they'd make loads of gospels and things to then spread the Christian message further out. And so I went to Port Mahomet for the first time just the other day, and you have the 3 great Pictish stones like Nig, Andwick, and Hilton of Cadboll, and the quality of artistry combined with that religious centre helps the Picts make loads of sense. Whether the Book of Kells was made there, I don't think we can ever say for sure, but there's loads of good evidence that it was. And that shows that the Picts are this very knowable, educated elite who control their land with enough organisation that they can sustain with food this elite. And also they're connected enough to their neighbours in peace that they can have religious and kind of artistic connections going back and forth to Ireland and to what's now Northern England. And I think I like these Picts better than the mystery Picts.
Yes, and I think that what Victoria's done, the real convincing bit for me, you've touched on there, is where else do you see that level of artistic novelty, love of novelty and experimentation and things? Where else do you see that, for a place to have produced something like the Book of Kells, which is bonkers? I mean, it's not even a proper gospel book. It's not sort of really designed to be read. It's just this great big mad show-off thing that could only have come from a place where mad show-off art is the norm,
That's it. Like, I've got, like, it's many, many years old now, but I've got this big hardback Book of Kells illustrated, where it's just all the nice colour pictures of I should probably get an updated version, but it's just worth lingering on because it does. Like, the Pictish stones are obviously wonderful, but when you go to them on a dull day, they can really seem flat. Like, you need, like, the light brings them to life and all that kind of stuff. But getting the Book of Kells is as fresh as ever. And like, in the same way, the Hilton of Cadboll stone, I suppose, is like a recreation of the landscape, or the work that you've done is a recreation of the landscape. It really helps you appreciate just how good this Pictish art was. And like you say, how much they were just enjoying it.
Yeah, it's that love of novelty in Pictish art that always gets me. You never see 2 symbols exactly the same, and that just keeps it all really interesting for me. If they didn't have that, I don't think I'd be spending so much of my life messing around with it. So, Ali, let's crack on. Next question is, what's your favourite Pictish stone or artefact out of the whole lot?
I mean, it's like when you ask that, like 7 things immediately come to mind. And I'm tempted, because we were chatting about that love of expanding the Picts away from the enigma. I'm tempted to go for something like the amazing silver chains, because again, it's a different way of getting to understand these people a little bit, because I just love the tiny, I think it's a double disc and Z rod motif on the end of the chain. So it's
on the terminals. Yeah.
It's just absolutely a stunning piece of work. And that is just like an artist's signature. they're saying like, this isn't just any old chain. This is a Pictish royal chain.
Yeah.
And I think because the stones, it is very hard to pick out a favourite. Like, because I'm so recently back from the Tarbert Peninsula, like the Shandwick stone is just phenomenal. Like the way it sits in the landscape where you can see absolutely everything and you can see it from right the way out to sea, right the way inland. It's just at the most perfect part of the landscape. So I think I love that. But and it's too obvious to say, but the Aberlemno stones, I think if I'm recommending anyone to go for a visit, probably the Aberlemno stones, because they're still there and they're like in their location, and they have that lovely, like the fact that they're over the different eras of Pictish culture as well. But yeah, I think favourite stone or artifact for now, I think the silver chains, because it just, again, it broadens out what the Picts were all about. I know that
fantastic.
Gordon Noble would love, I'm sure if he was here, he'd say something like, I found a post hole. It's my favourite artifact. Well, I'm happy for you, Gordon. I'm happy for you. I like the jewellery.
And speaking of Aberlemno, well, you've sort of wandered into the next question, which is which site, if you could only take your favourite tour group to one site, what would it be? I mean, the thing with Aberlemno is that I've always loved it, since I bothered somebody to take me there when I was about 14. But now that we've got that dig, that happened at Flemington, you can understand it a lot better. And that row of stones by the roadside, starts to look, you can read the whole landscape a lot better. And I love that.
Totally agree. I suppose, so if we're taking Aberlemno as read, I would say that if I'm taking a tour group, and this is actually something I'm writing about for the next Scots Magazine article I'm doing, is that Tarbert Peninsula, because you got the North Coast 500, right? And that's coming with all sorts of attendant problems. But also what I'm hearing is people just race along it. And it's not really the way to enjoy Scotland, I don't think. It's a place that seeps slowly out at you, rather than like seeing Scotland at 70 mile an hour. That's no the way to do it. If you literally just come off the North Coast 500, spend an afternoon in that part of the world, the Tarbert Peninsula, you can do the next stone, which is also in a lovely churchyard with like a nice nature walk and a picnic spot. And then you're up to the Shandwick stone, where you literally call, I think it's Joan or Jean, I can't mind their name. Her phone number's on the case. And you give her a bell, and she just nips up to the little village there, lets you in. And also, she's been involved in the preservation of the stone for the last 50 years. So she chats, you get a lovely chat off her about her experience of the stone. And then for me, she took me out for a cup of tea with her husband, Tommy. and then you're next, obviously, the Hilton Cadboll. But then you also have the brilliant Tarbert Discovery Centre, which is a great museum, probably the site of the Book of Kells, if not the site of somewhere really important anyway. And I just think and there's a nice cafe and things there, but it's quiet. Like, it's single track roads, friendly folk, there's stories galore, and it gets you off that, motorhome highway of the North Coast 500. I would say, so I'm putting that in the Scots Magazine as a big recommendation for Scottish folk and for visitors. If you're in the north, just take yourself an afternoon to appreciate at a slower pace this amazing landscape. Because like you say, it's almost like those Pictish stones are landing lights leading you up to the home of the Book of Kells. And you just understand a bit more about what was going on, and it helps you appreciate where you are. So yeah.
Great shout. And of course, you've got Edgerton as well. And Grome House and the Tarbert Discovery Centre, really need promotion, because they are absolute gems in the Scottish museum world, if you ask me. And the other thing with Nig is, of course, and we visited Nig with the Pictish Art Society last year, and the Hendersons came and joined us, George and Isabel Henderson. What a joy to sit with them and talk about the Nig stone. But the other thing that's always apparent to me when I'm at Nig is that the rest of that stone's still there somewhere. The missing bits, they're lying in the ivy or something around there. Yeah, that would be a great one. Which brings us to the last question, which is the stinker, and that is, which lost stone or artifact would you most like to come to light?
Well, this is so easy. Like you mentioned it right. The laws, the crescent thing from the laws. McManus, so just for folk that maybe aren't aware of it, because maybe it doesn't mean as much to the wider community.
And we'll put up a picture of it as well.
Perfect. It's just, correct me if I'm getting anything wrong, so I'm going just from memory here, but it's basically a sort of lovely crescent of bronze. And it is designed as if a fragment of a standing stone, in that it's got figures and Pictish symbols on it. But it's just, I worked at a bronze foundry for a few years, and so I just love bronze as a material. And it's this lovely shape. It's very It takes us back to the old Victorian word for the Picts, enigmatic, because it's not a piece of personal decoration, I don't think. It's not something that naturally you could imagine hanging somewhere. So what is this thing? It's beautiful craftsmanship, and it seems to be a proper objet d'art, like something made for the joy of doing it and to make something beautiful, which is so relatable. And again, I think it gets us away from the stones and gets us more in touch with the Picts as this artistic community, who we know for sure were also doing all this stuff on wood and tattoos and sketches. Like, this art was pouring out of these peoples. And I think the Picts present themselves as warriors so much on their stones. It's lovely to really see them as artists and as creatives and as masters of different mediums, because the stones, they're masters of that. They're lovely chains, but this disc, I think, would just be an amazing thing to behold, to see them working in bronze also.
Yeah, and I think there's quite a few theories, isn't there? One is that it was a sort of ambassadorial thing, maybe a badge of, a badge of authority, someone's authority being lent through this object to go and represent them. All sorts of things are possible. And all we've got is this drawing, but thank goodness we've got the drawing.
That's it. So McManus Galleries in Dundee, or I think they call themselves McManus Dundee's Art Gallery and Museum now, they've got a replica, which is a good replica and does give you a real sense of it. And maybe that should be good enough. But there's something about the real thing itself.
So it was a guy, Roddy, who made that replica. Let me tell you something about it. He told me, because when he was making the wax master to cast it in bronze, you know, the little dots, the little knobs that are all over it in the middle of the sort of key pattern, he used lentils. He stuck half lentils onto them because it was easier than making them all individually. That was brilliant. Kids love that, don't they? Tell them,
oh, good
made
man.
It of lentils. So very cool, and it is a really good reproduction, a sort of recreation of the thing. I think slightly bigger than it possibly was, you know. But yeah, it's a delightful item, a real treasure.
I feel I used to have that in Moneyfeith's House of Memories for a while on the window.
He made one for them as well. So I think that was a different one. So he made a few of them. I was involved in a project with him. I recreated Moneyfeith 2, the cross slab, and he did the plaque, and that was the Forged in Fire or something. The project was called. It was brilliant. Well, they made a wee video and things.
Well, it'd be good. Like, I'm just thinking of like a nice little income stream for the Perry when we go independent. Should we get all our ambassadors have to take one to every meeting? Ambassadors always give a gift. That is the thing. You always have to bring something. So all of our ambassadors have, like, if it's an ambassador who hails from Dundee, they'd have to have a specific Dundonian one. If it's an ambassador based in Glasgow, because I plan to be Dundee's sort of Scotland's ambassador. I think I fancy France. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'll be ambassador to France or Iceland. Both are fine.
Yeah, very cool.
I'll need a warehouse full of them for my ambassadorial.
The Ferrero Rocher in one hand and the Pictish
exactly. And all these baffled Hungarian diplomats like, cheers, this is absolutely class. It's what I've always wanted.
Brilliant, Alec. Listen, this has been fantastic. We'll need to get out for a wander at some point soon. No, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, and wish you all the best for your 2026 adventure. I'm sure we'll see you again soon, probably in about 10 minutes on Facebook.
Absolutely love the work that you do, man. And these podcasts are a great idea.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.